The January transfer window is upon us and we're expecting it to be a very active window in the WSL. With title challenges needing an extra push, competition in mid-table being hotter than ever and turmoil for teams at the bottom, every club has needs it wants to address in the winter window. In this video, I'll stress a player for every club to sign by assessing their current squad and finding players who can solve their issues. Let's dive into it. Arsenal. So we kick things off with Arsenal, the reigning European champions, but it's not really been the start to the season that they would have expected. I think many thought the Champions League win would be the start of something new, a real overhaul in the squad, and we'd see this Arsenal side improve massively. However, that's not really materialised. We'll start as we look through this squad by discussing those arrivals in the summer. The big one, of course, was Olivia Smith, probably their best signing, their most expensive signing by a distance as well, but she's come in and in the opportunity she's been given, she's shown a lot of quality. I think she's still a very raw player, but there's a lot to be very excited about there. I think that's been a good addition. Chloe Kelly, I think, is one that it's a weird one for me. I understand the emotional connection that Arsenal fans have to her, but I don't think this was a very smart business deal. I think it's okay, though. We'd expect them to have a bit of rotation in those wide areas anyway, especially as we look towards the summer window, so I'm not too concerned by her addition. As the rest of the side, well, you've got in goal, which has actually been quite important now, Borba coming in to the side. She's a player who we didn't really expect to really see this season, but with Zinsberger picking up a long injury, Van Domsar out for a few months as well, we have seen Borba handed opportunities. I think there have been games where she's not really been tested, but I think she's done enough to be an okay third choice. I do think with Zinsberger's contract up in the summer, though, I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal were looking at a new second or third choice goalkeeper and having Borba and Van Domsar competing. I also wouldn't be surprised, given Van Domsar's difficult start to the season, if Arsenal were looking at a new first choice keeper. So that is one area we could see an improvement. The other signing we saw Arsenal make was the addition of Taylor Hines, which I was quite critical of at the start of the summer. I didn't think this was a great addition, bringing a player from Liverpool, a side who were okay, but I thought there was a lot of limitations to her game. But actually, as a backup, able to cover either left back or right back, I think she's actually proven quite a handy addition to this Arsenal squad. But as the actual squad makeup then, where are the gaps? Where could we be looking at in terms of improvements? Well, we've got defence midfield, and the reason defence midfield is such a pressing issue is that not only are they quite light in this position, not only has it not been functional in this area, but they've also got some big contract expirations coming up in the summer. Kim Little has her contract expiring this summer, as does Victoria Pelova. Pelova is also linked to the move away in this January window. There's also Mariona Caldente with her contract up this summer. Now, I don't see any world where Arsenal don't give Mariona Caldente everything in order for her to stay. I think she is such an important player. But as it stands, they've got one defence midfielder going into next season. So I think that's definitely an area that needs to be touched on. However, we're not going to cover that today. I think it's something that's been discussed at length by a lot of people already. I want to touch on some other areas in this Arsenal squad that need improvement. I think the striker position will be okay. While they have got Russo and Blackstenius and then only Marnham in the 10. With Adjaman coming back, I think we'll see more of Alessia Russo in this 10 role. And I think obviously Pelova can play there. And Mariona Caldente, as we've seen in recent weeks, is fantastic higher up the pitch. So I'm not too concerned by that. I think that is more of a next summer deal. 2026, the summer window, look at moving on Frida Marnham, look to bring in someone who is elite in that position. The place I want to focus on in today's video is going to be centre-half. I think right centre-half, you've got it nailed down. Lakr's contract is up. She's probably going to leave anyway in this January transfer window. But I think with Reid and Williamson, you've got a player in Williamson who's ready for the here and now. She's already their best player. She's a very comfortable centre-half, elite level centre-half. I don't have any issues there. I think what we saw from Katie Reid at the start of the season is she's already ready to be a WSL starting player and very capable of being a rotation option in this Arsenal team. So I think right centre-half is absolutely nailed down. Left centre-half, there's more questions for me. I think Lotte Wubben-Moy has proven she's okay. I would think she's a better backup than she is a starting player. I don't think there's any world where Arsenal would want to go into, say, a Champions League final with Wubben-Moy as the starting option. So I think that she's okay as a backup. My problem's more with Steph Catley being a starter. I think Catley would be fine as a backup. But I think for me, Arsenal need to bring in a left centre-half, need to bring in someone who alongside Williamson or alongside a Reid would form a formidable partnership. So my session would be Maelle Lakrar. I think Lakrar gives you exactly what you want from an option for this Arsenal side. A player who is already at a point in their career where they're approaching their peak, but a player with huge amount of potential and a decent longevity of a career at Arsenal. If we take a look at her FBref profile, we can see a player who is incredibly comfortable in possession, ranking in the 86th percentile for switches with 0.35 per 90, progressive passes 4.09 per 90, up in the 69th percentile, really strong as well carrying the ball, 86th percentile for progressive carries, and a pass completion of 51.5 per 90, 67th percentile. Also really comfortable defender though as well, with strong tackles and interceptions and tackling numbers in general. Not so good on clearances, but I don't think that's really important for Arsenal. Arsenal are a side who want to get the ball down, want to play out from the back, and I think Maelle Lakrar makes that a lot easier for Arsenal to do. She's right-footed, but she plays as a left centre-half for Real Madrid, so she's got experience playing in that role. And I think alongside someone like a Leah Williamson, what we may see is that Maelle Lakrar is a little bit more reserved to allow Williamson to be a little bit more aggressive in her play. We know Williamson likes to play those long balls in behinds, and so if Lakrar is able to be more of a sweeper, more of a defensive option, while still being incredibly comfortable on the ball, of course, I think that gives you a little bit more solidity in that Arsenal backline. So I think at 25 years old, Lakrar would represent a really good deal. She obviously, her Real Madrid contract isn't up anytime soon though, so it's going to be a somewhat expensive deal to pull off, but I think it would give Arsenal a world-class centre-half in the future and a player who'd be incredibly reliable for years to come. Aston Villa. So next up is Aston Villa, and this is actually quite a difficult one to assess their season so far, because I feel like they've played really well in every game I've watched them, but the results haven't really matched their performances. There are definitely some areas in this squad, albeit a very well-rounded squad, there's definitely some areas that could do with improvement. So I look across this squad, and as I say, it's very well balanced. They've got options in almost every position. They've got two options they could play. Where I think they are perhaps let down, though, is that ability in front of goal. Kirsty Jansen's had a really strong season so far, to be fair to her. I think she's done incredibly well in this position. She's on 5 goals already this campaign. But we've not really seen enough, especially Ebony Salmon. She's ranking as one of the worst performing strikers in Europe right now because she's taking so many shots and just not scoring enough goals. And that's really something that needs to be addressed. And that's something I think would be addressed by competition. Now, obviously, it's not been great with Nunez out injured for most of the season so far, and she will be back soon. But I think they can bring in another striker anyway. Rachel Daly is getting on a bit now, and I think having someone who could play not only those striker positions as maybe a link-up striker, but also this attacking midfield position, I think someone who could do both those roles would be really important. So my suggestion is Larissa Mühlhaus. Mühlhaus is a 22-year-old German striker who plays her club football for Werder Bremen, and she had a fantastic season so far in the Frauen-Bundesliga. 9 goals and 3 assists so far this season in just 14 matches has been incredibly important for Werder Bremen. And if we take a look at her data set, it's really impressive. Shot creating actions in the 99th percentile among positional peers in the women's top 9 competitions, with 5.45 per 90. Shots total as well really high in the 64th percentile, 0.44 per 90. What I was a little bit unenamoured by was her non-pen goals, but she is a really good penalty taker as well, which is important to note. Also good chance creation, 0.22 expected assists per 90, ranks her in the 86th percentile, considerably above her assists, so showing with better teammates she'd probably create more chances as well. Successful take-ons as well, 1.53 per 90, ranks in the 86th percentile. So a player who's really comfortable on the ball, really comfortable operating in the final third in tight areas, scoring goals, creating opportunities for others, and most importantly, creating opportunities for herself. I think it's exactly what Aston Villa need. A player who can put the ball in the back of the net, but also someone who's reliable and able to offer options for her teammates. Brighton. So next up, we've got Brighton. I think this is the most bare-bones squad in the WSL, perhaps except someone like a Liverpool. Brighton are really light on players. If we take a look at the squad screen, what we can see is that I think their starting 11 is really strong. I think at the start of the season, when it was Seike on the right-hand side, when they had Adjemang, when they had Kirby, when they had Kafaji, it all looked really tidy. And I think their best 11 with this pivot of Kangovic and Simmons is really strong. The problem is right now they've got Adjemang who's out for the rest of the season. They've got Carla Camacho who has had opportunities but not really been able to do much with them. And Bex Rayner hasn't really been ready yet. So we've seen Seike through the middle. Now, as you can see, that leaves them really light on this right-hand side. We've also had Kirby out for a while. Haley's only just back from injury. We've not really seen Aisha Masaka yet this season either, a new signing brought in last summer. So we've not really seen much yet from Brighton in terms of these attacking options, and they're very light in their attacking areas. We've seen a lot of Rachel McLaughlin either on the right or the left-hand side doing a job for the team. And actually, their best attacker at times this season, Brighton, has been Maelle Lakrar, with her able to get so high from this left-back position. So I really like the defence. They definitely need a backup left-back, but again, Rachel McLaughlin can do that position as well. She seems to be playing everywhere this season for Brighton, but that's one that, again, I think can be covered. They've got Venegas who can play out there as well, so that's not too worrying for me. The pivot definitely needs some help. We've seen Kirby in this deep position this season at times. It's not really worked. They have got Fuka Sonoda, but we've not really seen her yet in the WSL. So it's only really been Kankovic, Simmons and Nordam. So they could probably do with another option there. But for me, the most pressing position Brighton needs to improve on is a striker. A player who's going to come in, replace the injured Maelle Lakrar and give them a really good attacking option to score more goals. They create a lot of chances. They simply just don't score enough. And my suggestion to fit that striker position is Hoffenheim striker Melissa Kostler. There must be something in the water in Germany this season because all their forward players seem to be firing, and that is true, of course, for Melissa Kostler. The Hoffenheim forward so far this season, 6 goals and 4 assists in the Frauen Bundesliga, and I think she could be looking for that step up in quality, and a move to the WSL I think would represent that. She's already used to playing in blue, so there's no issues there for Brighton. And if we take a look at her data set, I think she'd be a really good fit. See, what a striker at Brighton's got to be able to do is not only be an elite goal scorer, but also be really good at holding up the ball and bringing teammates into the game. We know that Daria Vidosic's system is very pass-oriented, and we know that they like to break away quickly. So you need a striker who's really comfortable receiving the ball in behind, but also receiving the ball 2 feet. I think Kostler represents exactly that. She's also a fantastic chance creator, 0.37 per 90 for assists, that's in the 95th percentile, and expected assists at 0.30 per 90, also in the 95th percentile. Goal scoring numbers are a little bit low, 0.49 non-pen goals per 90 and 0.44 non-pen XG, but that's fairly similar, so you'd expect with more chances she'd score more goals. We can also see shots total, she's taking a lot of shots, 4.26 per 90, that's in the 88th percentile. Shot creating actions at 3.95 per 90, 91st percentile. She's a player that likes to be involved in the final third, get shots away, create chance for teammates, and I think for Brighton, they bring in not only a player who would add a lot more goals to their team, but also a player who'd be able to get the best out of attacking talents like Frank Kirby, Kiko Seke and Madison Haley. Chelsea. And we move from one of the lightest squads in the WSL to one of the most bloated. It's of course reigning WSL champions Chelsea. And this is really difficult to assess their squad because there's players everywhere. But take a look at this squad screen, they have so many footballers. It's difficult to piece together. Obviously there's a lot of young players here. That's how they're able to comply with league registration rules. But there's also some areas I still think could do with some work. So if we take a look at this side, some areas where they are a little bit light is this sort of left wing back position. Now we've seen at times this season Wrighton play that role, we've seen Thompson play that role, we can see Niamh Charles play that role, and of course if it is a left back position, Niamh Charles is probably better suited to it than Sondi Baltimore, but we could see improvement in that role, especially if we are to see someone move on like Guro Wrighton next summer. We could see Baltimore back in a natural position as a left winger, and we could see someone come in to play this left back position, so that'll be interesting to see. I don't think that's going to be solved in January though. I think Chelsea are very happy with the left hand side as it is. Where they could use some work though is perhaps this right hand side. Their only natural right winger is Joanna Rytting-Kaneryd. Now Lauren James can play that role, but James is best in this 10 position where she's able to offer either in the left 10 or the right 10, get into the half spaces, get into the pockets and be a creative on goal scoring force. They've also got Alyssa Thompson, who's very comfortable on either wing, as we've seen already this season. We saw Thompson recently on the right-hand side, and what she's really good at doing in this position is making these sort of back post runs and getting in behind. But we know she's better on the left-hand side where she can cut in and take a shot on her right foot. They've also got Ivy Jones who can play that role, but with Maya Ramirez out so far this season, with Sam Kerr only just come back from injury, we've seen Beaver Jones almost exclusively through the middle this season. So this right wing position, if Chelsea are indeed going to use right wingers, because we have seen them use a 3 back at times this season and play with 2 10s and a 3-4-2-1. So it's not necessary they need a right winger. But if they are looking to play with right wingers or bring in another option who could play either as a right winger or as a sort of right 10 or right 8, however you want to describe that role, I think that's one position Chelsea could definitely improve in. But overall, their squad is very big. I think centre-half is one where if Bright is to leave, that could be somewhere that needs to be looked at. But again, that would only be if Chelsea are going to continue playing a 3-back. So in terms of those contracts that are expiring in the summer, Carnery's one who could be gone as well. That's a position then Chelsea need to address. And while I didn't want to be too obvious with my suggestion for Chelsea, you kind of have to be with Chelsea. They want to go out, they want to spend the big bucks, they want to get the best players. But this is a player who is available for free, and it's, of course, Trinity Rodman. Now, I've already done a video analysing Rodman in more detail. That'll be linked in the cards right now, so if you want to go and check that out after this video, you're welcome to do so. But Trinity Rodman would add a huge extra dimension to this Chelsea attack. A right winger who's natural at 8 being able to hold the width would be really important. We know no matter this Chelsea setup, they like players in those wide areas who can hold the width. Whether that's Baltimore and Carpenter as the wing-back, or whether that is Carnereed and, say, Guro Wrighton as the wingers, we know Chelsea like to hold the width. And Trinity Rodman is really good at that. She likes to hug the touchline. She likes to take players down the line. She's also not too one-dimensional in terms of she can take players either way. She's quite one-footed in terms of there's a huge reliance on her right foot. But with her being able to put crosses in to aim to the likes of Sam Kerr, is that really a big issue? Probably not. She can still cut inside and strike it well with her left foot. And her FBref profile looks absolutely phenomenal. This is compared to the NWSL in 2025, a season where she didn't have a full campaign. And of course, that is the other thing with Trinity Rodman, is those back issues, which could be a concern. When we look at that Chelsea squad and how many players they've got, they're probably one of the only teams in the world who could put up with those issues. Now, if we look at the profile, shots total is her most impressive statistic, 4.15 per 90. That ranks her in the 99th percentile. Non-pen goals and non-pen XG as well, also really impressive, 0.48 and 0.40 respectively, 93rd and the 89th percentile respectively as well. Assists a little lower than you would like them, but what we know about this system that Rodman plays in at the moment is that she's predominantly the goal scorer. She's the player who gets the chances. She's the player who scores the goals for Washington Spirit. So coming across to a club like Chelsea, where there are a lot of goal scorers, there's a lot of big talents, she's probably become a little bit more of a provider. And we've seen her do this on the international stage, where she's able to be a little less selfish and create opportunities for her teammates. And when you're surrounded by quality like she is in the USWNT stage, we'll see the same at Chelsea, where she'll be crossing the ball in a lot more than she does for the Washington Spirit. Shot creating actions also really good, showing that chance creation ability, 3.86 per 90. That's in the 87th percentile, and her dribbling statistics are really strong. While passing is a bit of a letdown, 1.74 per 90, we can see those dribbling statistics. Progressive carries at 3.28 per 90, ranks her in the 81st percentile. Successful take-ons as well, 2.03 per 90, that ranks her in the 95th percentile. And touches in the attack and penalty area, also really strong, 91st percentile, 6.08 per 90. So she's a player who loves to get in the final third, loves to be creative, loves to run at goal, and loves to take shots. And I think that's exactly what Chelsea want from that right wing. I think one of the biggest criticisms of Carnereed over her time at Chelsea, that she's not direct enough and she's not productive enough. There's so much quality with Carnereed. The little touches, the little teasing dribbles, very exciting to watch, but she doesn't score enough goals. She doesn't create enough opportunities. Rodman solves that issue. Rodman scores goals. Rodman creates a problem for the opposition defence. So I think it would be a great signing. Chelsea's concern would be around her fitness. I look at the current landscape of women's football. Is there a right winger who's better than Rodman, who's attainable right now for Chelsea? Probably not. We've just seen Maelle Lakrar move on. Unless Diani is unsettled at Lionesses, which I can't imagine she is, I don't really see who's attainable, who's better than Rodman right now. So I think for Chelsea, Trinity Rodman would be a great option. Everton. Everton, for me, feels like a prime example of a lot of money, but not a lot of sense. Similar to a club that we're going to get onto later in this video. Everton spent a lot of money in the summer, but when you look at the squad they've ended up with, it feels very poorly constructed. We'll take a look at this squad now. They've got a lot of defensive players. I think that's immediately obvious. Now, this isn't helped by the fact that Brian Sorensen has turned Ruth Mace into a centre-half. Now, she's been phenomenal in that position, don't get me wrong, but when you've got all of these defenders and their midfield pivots look really weak this season, why has he transformed their best midfielder into a centre-back? Not entirely sure on that one. They've got a lot of defenders. We've not seen half of them. We've not seen Stenovic really. We've not seen much of Weir. We've not seen Finnegan at all, I don't think. And Hobson, I believe, now has been loaned out because she wasn't getting opportunities. So actually, the only centre-halves we've really seen are Fernandez and Mace. We have seen Ishikawa play the role of right centre-half as well. And we saw Robinson play at right-back. There's been a really weird obsession this season with playing players out of position. There's no left winger on this pitch, you'll notice, because we've seen Hayashi in that role, we've seen Vignola in that role, I think we've seen Mamiki in that role at one point in the season, I think we've even seen Pacheco play this higher role, so there's been a lot of rotation at Everton. It's really difficult, therefore, to piece together what they actually need, because Brian Sorensen thinks these certain players play in different positions. I mean, if he views Hayashi and Vignola as left wingers, then you probably look at this midfield at being a little bit light. If you've used Vignola as a striker, Hayashi as a midfielder, they don't have any left wingers. So it's really difficult to sort of piece together where everyone lies. I think for me, though, the position that Everton most desperately need is probably a striker. And this is because Kelly Gargo's linked with a move away. And if Gargo is to move on this summer, or this January, I should say, this striker position is suddenly looking a lot weaker because you can put Vignola there, but then you don't really have a left winger. Mimiki can play there, but then you don't really have a 10, and you have to move a lot of players around to accommodate for that. You could play Katja Snice there, but as we learnt last season, Katja Snice isn't really clinical enough for me to play as a starting striker in the WSL. You could put Payne there, but we've not really seen her be clinical enough or take her opportunities. So if Gargo was to move on, I think Everton are in huge trouble. So for that reason, I'd probably look at a striker. If you're not looking at strikers, but we will get onto my suggestion in a moment, but if you're not looking in that position, then you've probably got to try and sort out this mess of a midfield or defence area. I think there'll be a lot of players that need to move on. Players like Hope have got their contracts up at the end of the season. I believe the same for Weir. I believe the same for Finnegan as well. So a lot of these will move on, and Stenovic I think as well. So a lot of them will move on naturally, but I think regardless of that, Everton have got to look at refreshing, really, this defence. Despite the fact it's so full, it feels like there's a lot of players who they're never really going to use. And what they're going to do, or what they should do, is either Mace is now centre-half, and that's cool, but they probably need some defensive midfielders, especially with Hayashi playing out wide. I really don't like that pivot of Wheeler and Van Gaal. I mean, to be fair, we saw in the Arsenal game, they played Vignola in this sort of deeper position, and then Van Gaal was in there, but it was all a very weird formation. Ended up with like Gargo and Payne up front, and Wheeler, I think, was playing on the right wing at times. So it was a bit of a strange one. I think if they're going to play Mace centre-half, bring in a defensive midfielder. If they're going to play Mace in midfield, bring in a centre-half. If they're going to play a Shikara at centre-half, bring in a right-back. But it's all very difficult to piece together because so many different players have played in different positions. So I'm going to take the easier option, and I'm going to address this attacking concern if Kelly Gargo does leave. So my suggestion for a player who could fill the role that Kelly Gargo does at Everton is Jamie Ravensbergen. Now, it's really difficult to give a good estimation of how well she's done this season because there's very little underlying data in the Eredivisie Vrouwen. What we can take a look at is her Champions League profile. Now, this does not paint her in a particularly good light, and that's because of the way that FC Twente play. Twente are very defensive. They don't really have the ball much in this competition. So instead, what we can take a look at, though, is those more impressive statistics, which is non-pen goals are still decently high, 0.34 per 90, in a competition where they're not the favourites, they're not particularly strong. Ravensbergen's still delivering, and that's going to be really important in a competition like the WSL, where she's not going to be joining the best club in the league immediately. I think she could come in and offer a really good option to a club like Everton. Progressive pass is also really decent, 1.34 per 90, which is a bit of an odd one, but that is because Ravensbergen likes to drop in, likes to help out. She's then progressing the ball a little bit more than she would if she was just left to play up front. So we're seeing her play a much more defensive role in the Champions League, difficult therefore to get a fair reading. But in the league already this season, 7 goals in the Eredivisie Vrouwen, that is a very impressive tally. And what we know about Jamie Ravensbergen is a number of things. She's a very technically gifted player. You know, you look at her, she's quite physically imposing, quite dominant against centre-halves, but she's also very good with the ball at her feet, and I think that's really important. Those two characteristics in a striker at Everton are really important. What we've seen this season at times is that they look to play that ball in behind into Kelly Gargo, and that's really important, but they also like to play it into Gargo's feet, and then she can bring other attackers into the game. So I think in terms of being able to offer more in that role, I think she can offer what Gargo offers you in terms of that physicality, being able to knock players out of the way, use her size, use her strength, and then get in behind. But she's also got that ability, that technical ability to create opportunities. She's also quite an intelligent footballer. That movement side of her game she's got that natural striker instinct to get into positions to create opportunities to score. So if we're thinking about how Everton like to play, they often like to draw the team into the left-hand side in order to play that long ball into the right-hand side, target Payne one-on-one against the opposition fullback. This worked really well against clubs like Chelsea and City, who play a situational back three, because you can isolate Payne against the fullback, get her in behind, and then look to play that ball across the box. I think Ravensbergen can do that really well. Sometimes that pass falls short, and you need that striker to be physical, and you need to be able to hold players off to get the ball to her teammates. But sometimes you just need her to be able to make that run in behind and meet that cross from Payne. So I think she can offer a huge box presence for Everton, which is really important. It's exactly what they'll miss if Kelly Gargo leaves. Leicester City. I think we all expect this to be a very difficult season for Leicester, and in many ways it has been, but there have been some huge improvements. I think that the way that Passmore is playing, while it may not be particularly aesthetically pleasing or very eye-catching to watch, it has got them points this season, and without that, they may be in a much worse position. We expected at the start of the summer, or at the end of the summer, sorry, when we saw the manager was sacked, we saw Ruby Mace depart the club, Leicester were in a really difficult position. They have done well to pick up some points, but this is a bit of a bare bones squad. There's a lot of positions that they still could do with an improvement in, and we're going to address that today. So this midfield is a problem. I think that now that Celeste Bourreel is out, that's not going to be ideal for Leicester. She's looking to be out for the rest of the season, so we can take her off the squad screen. That leaves just 2 defensive midfield options for Leicester. That is a big problem for Leicester. It was a problem at the start of the summer. Yes, they did well at the end of the summer when they lost Ruby Mace. They did well to bring in players like McLaughlin, players like Van Egmond, who can do those sort of positions, but they've never really replaced with the quality that Ruby Mace has. This backline's also looking quite weak. They lost Howard last summer, haven't really replaced her. They've got Keys and Tebow, who are very competent centre-backs, but without a right-back, we haven't really seen Heather Payne yet this season. She's played a couple games, but I think she picked up an injury in October. We haven't really seen her since then, and so we've seen Tebow playing a bit at right-back. We've seen Asmita Rael at times this season at right-back. We've seen players like Cayman playing different roles this season, so it's a very bare-bones squad, especially now that I've taken those injuries out. Mouchon's also been in and out of the side with knocks and whatever. She does now seem to be fit, but you can never be sure week on week. Yuto Rantala, another player who's still coming back from injury. So taking those injured players out, this starts to look a really weak squad. So for me, Leicester desperately need a right-back, desperately need a defensive midfielder, but also roguely also need a striker, because as much as they don't have those defensive players, their defence has functioned well this season. They've been able to play a bit of a back four with Tebow, Keys, usually Swaby and then Lass. Sometimes it's a 5-back and they put Cayman either as the right centre-half or the right-back or something to that effect. We often see them do okay in defence. Where the problems lied is in these attacking options. Shannon O'Brien has done okay. I think it's been a much better season for her than we would have expected in previous years, but I still think they could do better. I think Hannah Kane is a really good impact player in terms of being able to come on, make those runs in behind, offer threat to opposition defences, but she just doesn't score enough. And Naomi Mouchon hasn't really been consistent since coming to the league. So for me, as much as those defensive midfield and defensive positions need reinforcing, I'm going to suggest a striker that I think Leicester should go out and sign. And my suggestion for that striker position is going to come from the Damallsvenskan, and that is going to be Sara Fornes. I think Fornes is a player who, while we don't have a load of data on, we know is really talented. 17 goals in the Damallsvenskan this season. It has been overshadowed by Felicia Schroeder's 30 goals, but there's no realistic opportunity of them signing Schroeder. But Fornes, I think they could pull off. I think Fornes is really good at getting those runs in behind, timing it well, breaking in behind and getting those opportunities. Really smart finisher, as proven by her numbers, 17 goals, 1 assist as well this season. Unfortunately, there's no data really available for the Damallsvenskan, so it's difficult to get a fair read on where she may lie for a lot of those underlying numbers. But what we can see from observing her playing, really good at making those runs in behind, really sharp eye for goal as well. So I think in terms of when we look at how this Leicester team likes to play, they're often quite defensive, looking to spring forwards quickly. And I think Sara Fornes being able to get in behind, looking to create chances, looking to be that focal point of the attack could be really important. I think if they compare her alongside a striker who's a bit more creative, I think that could be really important. And, you know, pairing her alongside a Mouchon, pairing her alongside a Shannon O'Brien, I just think makes that front line for Leicester a lot more dangerous. Even a Missy Goodwin, because we have seen Leicester use a sort of front two more often this season. At times they used a front three, and that could be interesting, especially with Rantala coming back from injury. But it's been more of a 5-4-1 or a 4-4-2, depending on their opponents. So if they're looking for a striker who can take her opportunities, I think Sara Fornes would be a great option. Liverpool. So we're on to the bottom place side in the division, and I think Liverpool is a really difficult one, not because there's nowhere they need to improve, but because there's everywhere they need to improve. We take a look at this squad, it is incredibly light. We've seen a lot of injuries as well, which hasn't helped things. The fact that Herbinger probably out for the season, so we can swipe her off the screen for now. We've also seen some pretty nasty injuries to a number of players, really. We've seen Risa Shimizu out for periods. We've seen Kerry Holland out for periods, that she does seem to be back. We've seen Romaine Howard out for most of the season so far. We've seen Sam Kerr's picked up an injury recently as well. So they've been very bare bones this season, Liverpool, not to mention their problems in goal as well, with Laws not really, I think she had an injury at the start of the season, hasn't really got her place back. And of course the FA disciplinary hearing into Rafaela Borgraf. So omissions out of the way. Where are the problems in this squad? Well, one of them is not using Emilia Šimčák at all, and then she got injured, so she's now out for the season. We've also seen some really odd uses of certain players this season, but where are the holes? Left wing, Kapok started in that position at the start of this season, but with issues hitting the midfield and them needing some central creativity, we've seen Kapok dragged into this position. So it does leave them light on the left wing. Now, we have seen Mia Enderby play that position with Holland on the right. I think also with Kiernan and Howe coming back from injury, we could see Beta Olsen in a wide area, but with how good she's been in front of goal this season, I would be very wary of wanting to move her from that position. We've also got then this midfield options where I don't really think Silcock is a player that Gareth Taylor trusts. Lundgaard and McLean have done really well to come in and be those options with no Sam Kerr and no Herbinger. They've also got Shaw, who's still coming back, I believe, from an ACL injury. Their defence is also a big problem, not because they don't have loads of options, but because the options they do have aren't really good enough. Parry is not a right back, she's a right wing back, and we've seen her in this deeper role this season. That's not really worked. Shimizu's missed most of the season. She's a great option when fit. Hopefully nothing serious and she can be back soon. Grace Fisk, a player who's really good at centre-back, but is also probably their best option at right-back. She's also out injured at the moment, which hasn't been ideal. I think when it's Fisk and Evans or Fisk and Clark, it hasn't looked completely hopeless at the back for Liverpool. But I think in recent weeks with Fisk out, we've seen Evans at left centre-half, we've seen Clark at right centre-half. It's really not worked for Liverpool, especially when you've got Woodham and Parry. These are both great attacking at fullbacks, but it leaves centre-backs exposed and they don't really have they don't really get back quick enough to deal with it. They're really poor playing out from the back, Liverpool. Faye Kirby this season, the number of errors that Kirby and the centre-halves have made, they're costing Liverpool. Every week they're costing Liverpool. So for me, as much as the attack is light and they definitely need players there, we know they're looking at a right winger from Herken, Alice Bergstrom. That would be brilliant. She's a right winger, I believe. That would probably push someone like Holland onto the left-hand side or Enderby to the left-hand side more permanently. But I think she'd come in, Bergstrom, and add a huge amount of talent. They love signing Swedish attackers. Kapox and Olsen have been fantastic this season. So that sort of solves a bit of that issue. Midfield is still a position they need to make up in, but equally, once Kerr's back, once Herbinger's back, you don't really want to have signed another player who's then competing for minutes because there's not enough minutes to go round. So I think the defence, where it needs improvement, I thought about going for centre-halves, but actually I think the biggest need for Liverpool is a goalkeeper. A sturdy and reliable pair of hands, someone who's good playing out from the back, that could solve Liverpool's defensive issues. So who would I suggest in goal? Well, I've gone for Como goalkeeper Astrid Gillardi. This is definitely an ambitious one. I think that obviously Como have done really well this season. They're second in the Serie A Femminile, and while that may not be sustainable long term, they have started this campaign at least very well. However, I think that this is a signing that they could pull off. I think Gillardi is a player who has ambitions to play at a very high level. She was at Inter before she got a loan move and then a permanent move to Como. I think giving her an option to go to the WSL, be a starting goalkeeper at a side in Liverpool who, yes, they've had a terrible season this season, but are usually in the top half. I think that matches the aspirations of Gillardi. I think she'll see the project and she'll want to be involved. Her data has been really good this season. 3 clean sheets in 9 appearances in the Serie A Femminile. And if we take a look at her FBref profile, it's really impressive stuff. Goals against at 1.29 per 90, slightly on the lower side, but Como are a side who play quite openly. They concede a lot, but they also score a lot. And so we are seeing Astrid Gillardi face a lot of shots on goal. And that's shown by shots on target against and save stats being super high. 5.65 shots on target against per 90, saves at 4.09 per 90, both ranking in the 94th percentile. And her post-shot expected goals minus her goals against is really strong as well at plus 0.27, a positive figure. That ranks in the 97th percentile amongst goalkeepers in the women's top 9 competitions. So what we're seeing from Gillardi is that she's a top shot stopper. They concede a lot of shots at Como. What other club concede a lot of shots? Liverpool. They're conceding a lot of shots at the moment. There's a very huge amount of openness at the back. They conceded 9 goals to Chelsea. That's absolutely criminal. But if there's a goalkeeper who not only is going to be a brilliant shot stopper for when things do go wrong, but also won't make as many mistakes, Ashra Gullardi's going to fit that perfectly. Clean sheet, 0.38 per 90 as well. That's in the 70th percentile, a clean sheet percentage of 38.9%. Liverpool would love to have that clean sheet percentage. It's not incredibly high, but it's better than what they've got right now. Crosses stopped, also really important, 5.6% per 90 of those crosses stopped. That's a really important statistic. It shows that she's going to be able to come out, claim the ball. That ranks in the 57th percentile, come out and claim the ball, deal with those attacking options. I think Liverpool have been really bad. I mean, they have been really bad in pretty much every area, but set piece is another area where they fail really to deal with the ball. And we saw that particularly against Chelsea, where there were 2 goals Chelsea that were disallowed, where Fakeo's goalkeeping was weak. She went in low. She didn't get pushed by anyone. She just fell over. She wasn't going out to claim the ball. Gullardi, she'll come up, she'll claim that ball and deal with that threat. And I think that's exactly what Liverpool need from their goalkeeper. London City Lionesses. You would think the team that brought in the most amount of players last summer and spent the most amount of money would need to do anything in January. And to an extent, that is probably true. This London City squad is absolutely massive. They've got so many players and it's been really poorly built. There's a lot of players, don't really know how they all fit in together. And of course, it's going to be a busy January because they've got a new manager. So we're going to talk about all of that as we look through this squad. It's really difficult for me to suggest a player here because as we see, there are a lot of players everywhere. There's so many players in the squad we've not even seen this season. There's so many players that we think will probably move on next summer with no problem. Players like Wild, we've not seen at all this season. Henson, not really seen her at all this season. We've not seen many of these defensive midfielders. Marashi, another one we've not really seen at all this season. And suddenly it starts to look a little bit clearer. But still, I mean, we've barely seen Taya Goldie, Issa Cardinal. These are good players who just haven't really been given any sort of an opportunity. I think in goal, Annalise has been fantastic, but the rest of them haven't got a go. I mean, the fact that Orman is so far away from the pitch, he's now in the comms box, should say a lot about how big this squad is. So for me, London City have got to clear things out before they can actually bring in players. And the problem is there are some really good players in this side. There are some really nice signings. I think left wing back is a phenomenal position for them. But they don't need 3 left wing backs. Imran, Pattinson and Corrales are all good for the WSL, all really good level left backs. But we've not really seen Poppy Pattinson play. I know she struggled a little bit with injuries. We've not seen loads of Lucia Corrales. And Rafia Imran has actually looked pretty decent in her opportunities. At right wing back, comparatively, they don't really have many options. We've not seen Brown play at all this season. Jana Fernandez is excellent, but she's not really a right wing back. She's a good right back. She's a good sort of right centre half, but she's not really a wing back. And in those attacking positions, she's sometimes let down by a lack of attacking technical ability. Midfield, another odd one. Zellum was brought in the summer alongside Kennedy. Neither of them have done particularly well. Kennedy's played more than Zellum, I believe, but neither of them had looked good when playing. They were both players who were cast off by WSL sides previously because they weren't really at the level. I don't think London City did well by bringing them both in as a package deal. I don't think they've made London City a better side. Maria Perez, a player who was fantastic for them in their promotion campaign last season, has barely got a look in. They've either got to give her opportunities or sell her on. She's really good. I like Maria Perez. I would rather see her play, but I don't think we will. Yulia Rodar, haven't seen loads of her this season. She's got fleeting minutes, but again, a player I can't really assess because we haven't seen loads of. Grace Gayoro is obviously really good. We've not really seen her play to the highest standard that she can, but I think if you bring someone in to play this defensive midfield role next to Gayoro, I think you free her up, Gayoro, to go and do a little bit more attacking and be a brilliant box-to-box midfielder. Attacking areas then, left wing. Is there anyone? Lotta Lindstrom hasn't really played. Francie hasn't really played. We've seen, if they have used a left winger, we've seen them push someone up higher, like a Corrales, or push Aslani out wide. But we've not really seen anyone play on the left. They've tended to play with 2 strikers more often than with a left winger. And if they have used a left winger, as I say, that tends to be someone slightly out of position, someone like a Paris, for example. Up front, they've got Goodwin and Paris. Paris has done really well. Goodwin, good in terms of her movement, but I don't think she scores enough for me to be the sort of starting striker for this London City super team they're trying to build. Attacking midfield, Danielle van der Donk is simply there for a paycheck. She is the highest paid midfielder who hasn't played this season at all. She hasn't played a minute of football yet. What a pointless signing. She'll probably, she's got a 2-year deal. Will we ever see her play for London City? Maybe. But I know she had some injury concerns at the start of the season, but we've not seen her at all. a massive waste of a deal, really. Asllani, still their best player. I don't really see a way that they let her go at the end of her contract this season, but they should do. She's been a fantastic servant, but they should be going to improve on her. Instead, they're still so reliant on Asllani to do anything, really. And then this right wing, I think Freya Godfrey's been fantastic when we've seen her, and we've not really seen Sophia Jacobson. So there's a lot of players in this London City squad who don't really play. I think that's got to be addressed. The summer's got to be a bit of a clear out. Again, they brought in so many players they didn't need. I think this backline's been okay, but I think Linari and Sangare are really good players. Really don't like Saki Kumagai in the middle of the back three. I think so often she has made mistakes. I think the amount of penalties they've conceded. Yes, I think, Yana Fernandez, I believe, has conceded one. I want to say there was one from Imran as well, but I might be wrong. But the majority for me the majority of goals I can see seem to come from mistakes or penalties given away by Kumagai. I just don't think she's at the level. I think that she's a player who doesn't look 100% on it. Probably past her best, Saki Kumagai. So that's a bit of a problem for London City. It's a very old squad. There's a lot of positions where they've got a lot of players. I just don't think it really works. A lot of players don't really play the same sort of system. Like Sangare and Linari are really good centre-backs, but they don't really complement each other in the way you'd want to. I think someone like a Cardinal would be much better fitted to someone like a Linari. I think there's so many players in this squad who just don't really need to be here. That's got to be their first point of call. For me, though, I would ignore the depth and I would bring in players who can come in regardless of position. Right wing back's got to be a position they target for me. Striker could be a position. Depends how they view that going forwards. If they're going to actually ever play Sani Franci or Lindstrom, then maybe they're okay. But we've not really seen them. I think they've got 150 and 250 minutes respectively this season. So we've not really seen them given an opportunity. But there have been problems across the board for London City. We can see why Proyechet was sacked. I still think it's a wrong decision. I think that it's not Proyechet's fault. I think it's the fault of the board who've built this squad, the recruitment staff who've built such a poorly constructed squad. It's on them for me more than it is on Proyechet. But they did underperform their XG. They were leaking goals defensively. And I think their place in the table was not very fair, or not a fair representation of how they performed this season. So where to improve? Well, Eder Maestre is coming in. I think for me, he'll want to bring in a midfield. One of the key parts of his Tenerife system has been it's a 5-3-2 with a player, I'll use Zellum to represent it on here, playing this sort of deep midfield role, and then almost 2 10s playing alongside her, or 2 8s. That'll be Gayoro and who knows, playing this sort of left 8 position. And I'll put Asllani there for now, which it probably will be, to be fair, but playing these positions and making these sort of channel runs. So I think that's what we'll see them do. I don't think Zellum's perfect for this role. I don't see them using Maria Perez, but we'll see. I think Perez will be better in this sort of position, to be fair. So for me, defence midfield, someone who can play alongside Gayoro, free her up to do the attacking work, and someone who could add a little bit more control to that London City midfield. So my suggestion is going to be Natalia Ramos. A metronomic Spanish defence midfielder is one of the most aesthetically pleasing nationality and position combos, and I think Natalia Ramos perfectly embodies that sort of role. She's a player who's very comfortable on the ball, really good at dictating the tempo of the game, and I think in a London City system which can sometimes feel very all over the place, having a player in the base midfield who can control the game can be perfect. And of course, the added bonus is that Natalia Ramos is at UD Tenerife, the club that currently Eder Maestre is working at. Now, obviously, he's just left. He's now at London City. I think taking Natalia Ramos from that setup, putting her straight into the London City setup, will not only make it easier for her to come into the league because she'll understand the manager and his tactics, but also for the rest of the squad to adapt because I have a player who already knows the system. So Natalia Ramos will be perfect, and her FBref profile is really impressive. She's also a penalty taker, which I think could take that burden off of Kosovari Asllani, especially if she's thinking about leaving at the end of this season. Her penalties have been really impressive this season, 0.18 per 90, 98th percentile, so very consistent from the spot. She's also a brilliantly combative midfielder, and they don't have anyone like this in their squad. It is such a luxury team. A lot of players who are good on the ball, but there's not really someone who's going to make a tackle. And I think that Ramos can be that player. Tackles won, 1.23 per 90, 84th percentile. Tackles at 3.62 per 90. Sorry, that was aerials won, 1.23 per 90. Tackles at 3.62 per 90, 93rd percentile. And interceptions, 1.96 per 90, 92nd percentile. They need a midfielder who's going to be combative, going to be physical, going to win the ball fallback and be the platform for the rest of the team to operate. You've got two wing backs, and as much as I don't like Jana Flanders in that role, you've got two wing backs who want to push high, you've got central midfielders who want to push high, you're playing two strikers. That's what we expect the system to look like. They need a defensive midfielder who is not only really good at covering that sort of wide space and being really defensive, but also really good at covering for that back line, because I think we have seen, especially Kumagai in the centre of that back three, be exposed this season. So bringing in someone like Ramos, especially, I mean, we don't know Maestro's going to play the same setup, but we can assume it'll be something similar. If it is, then Tyler Ramos will fit in seamlessly and make that transition period from Proyset to Maestre much easier to handle. Manchester City. So flying high are Man City right now, and they look to be in a really good position to potentially claim the WSL title, which would be a huge feat in Andre Jeglert's first season. But you still feel with the squad looking a little bit light in places, some reinforcements could be really important to help them get the title over the line. So let's take a look at this squad. Well, I think, again, there are positions where it is okay. I think their wide players now, after they've brought in so many wingers to replace Chloe Kelly, looks really strong, and actually you can see now why Gareth Taylor wanted to move on Kelly so badly. I think that the way that Fagino's developed, the way that Fowler's developed, Bene's come in this season as well and been super competitive for positions. I think we can see why City weren't too worried about keeping Chloe Kelly. I think there are certain other areas. This midfield pivot of Blenkild Brown and Hasegawa has been phenomenal this season. Lohman in and out the side with injuries, but when she has played, has looked really solid. I still think they could do with someone else, but with Ayumu Oyama coming back from loan now, she was out on loan for the first half of this season. I think that she can be an option in this midfield pivot, so we'll see what happens there. If they come back and in January she's not ready, I think they'll have time in the rest of the window before it slams shut at the start of Feb to bring in someone to fit that role. So I think they can afford to sort of wait and see the level that Oyama is at. Attack midfield really strong. Viviana Miedema is now playing that role pretty much permanently. There was a thought that maybe she could play as a sort of second striker alongside Shaw, and to be fair, they do sort of function like that in possession anyway. But she is definitely this attacking midfield role. They've also got Clinton who can do that really well, and Laura Coombs as well, who is an option in any of these sort of midfield spots. So their midfield seems to be okay. They could probably still do with one more, but they did do well to bring in Lohman, bring in Clinton, and shore up that midfield. Defence for me is the area where I want to focus on for City today, because I think this right-hand side defence, Kasperai, has been phenomenal. Such a good season for Kirsten Kasperai. She's stepped up as a leader on the field, especially in the absence of Alex Greenwood, and she's been absolutely exemplary for City. However, if she is to get injured, I really don't trust Laura Weinreuter to offer the same thing. And so I think another option at right back could be really important. Now, they have got Naomi Lazell who can play there. That would be an okay fit, but I still think they'd like another right back. But the position for me I really want to target is centre back. Looking at this City team, they've got, so at left back, they've also got Uhabi. She's been there a long time. She's into the last 6 months of her contract. So I think they could look to move her on, especially since we know Jeglerts likes to invert this left centre back in possession, or this left back, sorry, into left centre back in possession and play a sort of situational back three. This is what we've seen a lot this season. And if they're looking to do that more permanently, they probably need either another centre-back, if Greenwood's going to play this left-back role, or a left-back who can do it more, or do it to a better standard if Greenwood's going to play left centre-half. Now, I think Greenwood's going to play left-back. I think they're going to use Nack at left centre-half. So for me, I'd like to see them bring in, because they've already got Pryor and Rose, who are, good young options that are going to come through in the future. I'd like to see them bring in a centre-half who is around mid-20s, who's able to come in and compete short-term and could potentially be a very useful servant for Manchester City. And as it happens, I've got a player who exactly fits that criteria. I would like to suggest Sarah Hort. She's been fantastic this season for Vålerenga. Watching her in the Women's Champions League, Hort has been excellent, and I think that she's ready now for that step up to the next level. She's been really good in the top series, a really good consistent player, but now I think she wants to make that move into a top European side, and I think City would be a great fit. It's low pressure. We know that they'll probably start with Rose, Nack and Greenwood, but I think bringing Hort in slowly as another option who can play at centre-back but is also left-sided, so she could even offer an option at left-back. I think that would be really important for City. I think it gives them more opportunity to rotate in that back line, which I think is really important for ensuring we don't see injuries like the long one to Greenwood be too much of an issue for City. And if we look at her data profile, she's really strong. Sarah Hort will start with the goals because City don't have enough goals from their defenders at the moment. It's not like Rebecca Nack is heading home every single corner, so they could do with another aerial presence, and Hort is exactly that. 0.17 non-pen goals per 90, that's the 97th percentile, and a non-pen XG of 0.15 per 90, that is in the 99th percentile. So if Rebecca Nack doesn't score, Sarah Hort probably will, and that is a really useful dynamic for City to have. Centre-halves who can be on the pitch, come up for corners and offer an immediate goal threat. That is another tool in the City arsenal, and if they've got Nack, who is the sort of starting centre-half who can do that, but then they've also got Sarah Hort who can come on and be a goal-scoring threat, that covers City in their rotation team. Aerials 99th percentile, 3.61 per 90. She's an incredibly tall, physical centre-back. Is Sarah Hort should come into the City side and pretty much offer a like-for-like swap for Rebecca Nack. So in games where Nack is tired, you can bring in Hort and it won't look too dissimilar. Interceptions 1.72 per 90, 87th percentile as well, and progressive passage, which is really important, at 4.82 per 90, 80th percentile. This is really important because from that sort of left centre-half position, she'll be playing in the middle of a back three at times. We could see her in the right centre-half position as well. From those positions, it's really important that she is the player who is able to receive the ball and spread it wide, get it up the pitch, get it into those pocket players, play it into Yui Hasegawa. If Kasparov is on, play it straight into Kirsten Kasparov and skip that stage. She needs to be really good with the ball at her feet, and Sarah Hort absolutely is. So if City are looking for another player who can be a defensive option, who can rotate with Rebecca Nack, Sarah Hort would be a perfect signing. Manchester United. Now, usually these videos are really important for United because in the last few years, their business in the transfer market has been quite slow and they haven't done a lot of it. They haven't had a lot of investment. But this January window, they've already done a lot. So let's dive into that and look at any areas where they may still need improvements. Firstly, they've already announced the signing at the time of recording of Hanna Lundqvist. That was announced yesterday. Hanna Lundqvist is a defender who can play either centre-back or right-back, and I think that's really important. United, I would say, still need a centre-back, but in terms of someone who can rotate with Jada Riviere, I think Lundqvist is perfect for that role. She's able to get up the line off an attacking option, but she's also a capable centre-half, so if they do have an injury to Letizia or just want to, I don't know, rotate her for once, she could be really good in that role. The other player who isn't announced yet, but it sounds like they're going to announce her today at the time of recording, is Lea Schuler. Elite striker coming in from Bayern Munich. This is exactly the kind of transfer United need to be making if they want to kick on, if they want to compete for the WSL title. I think having her competing with Mallard, competing with Turlin for that striker position is really strong, and it's widely expected it will lead to Rachel Williams leaving the club. However, there are still some areas where I think United do need some improvement. One of them is this sort of right wing or attack midfield role. But I've already spoken about that in a previous video. They've got Bizet, who is out with, obviously she's pregnant, so she's not going to be involved this season. I think Awujo's played in this attack midfield role and hasn't really done incredibly well. So bringing someone who can cover Toon and cover part will be really important. This is something I've already covered in another video, though, so go and check that out. That'll be in the cards now. The player I want to suggest, though, for Manchester United is going to be a defensive midfielder because they've got a fantastic pivot of Miyazawa and Zigiotti Olma. But with Griffiths not really being at the moment in Skinner's reckoning, and Lisa Nalsoon looking past her best, I think they can afford to bring in a defensive midfielder, let Nalsoon leave the club, and there's still an option then for Griffiths to come through. And so I think a defensive midfielder to compete in this pivot will be really important. And the player I'm going to suggest for that role is the combative Venezuelan Gabriela Garcia. Garcia is 28 years old and plays her club football for Atletico de Madrid. Now, this could be a little bit of an issue is that she's already pushing 30, but I think you can still get a really good 5 years out of her and it not be too much of an issue. So I think in terms of bringing in someone who is reliable and ready to compete in the here and now would be really important, especially when now United are in the Champions League knockouts. And Garcia's profile has been phenomenal. Not only would this help them weaken their opponents in the Champions League knockout playoff round, but it'd bring in a really good option. Aerials 2.01 per 90, 94%. I think what United lack massively in that pivot is height. Miyazawa and Zigiotti Olma are both really comfortable players, technical players, really strong in that area. But in terms of someone who can be combative and who can deal with some of the really good attacking threats of other teams, they need a defensive midfielder for those kind of games against the top sides who can come in and be physical, and exactly what Garcia can do. But she can also provide goals, 0.23 non-pen goals per 90. That ranks in the 92nd percentile, 0.20 non-pen XG as well, 94th percentile. So from that defensive midfield position, she's still able to get forwards and contribute. Shots total 2.14 per 90, 94th percentile. So if we think about how United's midfielders go, we often see Ziggy Otioma and Miyazawa push up the pitch quite high. Garcia can still do that role while being a more defensively solid option. Also really strong then in terms of that ball progression numbers. Key passes 1.10 per 90, 61st percentile. Progressive passes 5.00 per 90, 62nd percentile. Progressive carries 0.91 per 90, 57th percentile. And shot creating actions 2.86 as well. So looking at that chance creation, 72nd percentile. Really talented player is Gabriel Garcia, but also really physical. And I think in that defensive midfield role, rotating with Miyazawa and Ziggy Otioma would be a really nice option. Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham had a flying start to the season under Martin Ho, and new arrivals Tamberg and Koga alongside the new manager have absolutely revitalised this team. Now though in January they're looking to kick on from their position in 5th in the table and make this squad even stronger. If we take a look at the squad screen, they've already brought in players like Signe Gaupset, who's going to be a huge addition and probably play on this left hand side. So what Tottenham would do with this left wingers, they like to push them into the 10 role, have the left wing back in Nilden, left back, sorry, in Nilden overlap and create this sort of 4 behind the striker. And so I think Gaupset's probably most likely to play in this left wing position. We've also seen them linked with Micah Hamano, who could come in and play this 10 role and offer really good support to Olivia Holt in sort of a rotational role. And at left back, Julie Blackstad's been an option noted who could be a backup to Amanda Nilden. So we've already seen Tottenham make a lot of deals happen. But one area I've not really seen any rumours is at right back. Right back's been an odd position really for Tottenham. They started the season there with Josephine Rybrink. They then had Ash Neville and Grant in for multiple games, and since then it's been Neville who's been the starting player. For me though, I think they can do a lot better. See, Grant's able to cover at both fullbacks, so she could still get minutes. For me, I think Ash Neville's been a fantastic servant to the club, but with her contract up at the end of this season, I think we could see her move on. And so for me, bringing a right back who can not only be a bit more offensive, a bit more of an offensive option at times if Tottenham need that, but also tuck in properly into the back 3, I think would be a perfect addition for Tottenham. And the player I suggest is Italian international Lucia Di Guglielmo. Di Guglielmo was fantastic at the European Championships. We saw her playing in a range of roles for Italy, which went from being the right centre-half, which is much more defensive, to the right wing-back, which she was much more aggressive. And that sort of mixture of positions that she plays can lead to the data set being quite skewed, because we see it with her club side that she's a little bit more aggressive, and so defensive numbers consequently drop off. And we can see that in her profile. Tackles down at 1.55 per 90 and tackles 1 down at 1.03 per 90. But again, that's because she's often pushing high up the line, not really being in the defensive third. Blocks 1.09 per 90 this season is a lot lower than we would expect, but non-paying goals 0.11 per 90, showing she could offer an attacking option should Tottenham want it on that right-hand side. However, she can do that more defensive role, which just isn't really shown in the data. We saw it for Italy, as I say, at the Euro. She was able to be a bit more defensive, able to offer that defensive cover, and then in other games was able to be more of an attacking option. So bringing in someone who can do a lot of different roles, who can be quite versatile, but also provides a huge upgrade on what they've already got in that position, I think would be perfect. And they're already looking at improving their attacking options. Tottenham could really be a force to be reckoned with. West Ham United. So the final club in this video is West Ham, currently battling relegation and with a squad that doesn't really look good enough to compete, but they do now have a new manager in Rita Guarino, and we're going to discuss how this squad could look quite different under Guarino and what they need to make it work. Well, firstly, it's going to look more like a 4-3-3. So I've mapped out roughly where those positions could be for certain players. And I think the one area where we could see a huge amount of improvement is midfield. Katrina Gori and Una Siren have been a really nice pivot over the last few years, but I think they need more energy in their West Ham. And by playing midfield 3, this is going to force West Ham's hand a little bit, and I think we may finally see an opportunity for Sara Bracero. She's a really talented attacking midfielder. They've also got Anna Suzuki and Poibel in there as well, but I really hope it's Bracero who's given a chance in this midfield 3. Really good creative midfielder, and if they can give her chances, I think she'll thrive in this setup. The defence is also going to look quite different with a 4-back now in possession, out of possession, and I think what we'll see is, well, if Denton does leave, they could be in a lot of trouble, but if she doesn't, she'll be at right back, Hanshaw rotating with Belumo at left back, a partnership then of Nystrom and Tisiak, I think, is a lot stronger than what we've seen them use at times this season. I mean, the most recent game, the the Subway League Cup game against Man City, it was Endo on the right-hand side, Tisiak in the middle, and then they had, I think, Hanshaw here at left wing-back. They then had Denton, and they had Morgan playing right wing-back. This is a very odd makeshift defensive line, and what will look a lot better, I think, is Denton playing her natural position, Endo playing her natural position. We'll see Tisiak at right centre-half, Hanshaw back in her natural position, and Nystrom coming back into the side. Attacking wise as well, I think that she'll start to get the best out of these attacking players. We know that one of the biggest things she likes to push is freedom for those creative attacking players. And they've got a lot of them, West Ham. They've got Shakira Martinez, who hasn't really fired in the same way she did last season. They've also got Vivian Asai, who I think will flourish in this new system, being creative off the left-hand side, and Rika Ueki on the right-hand side, but also with backups like Leda Vandela, who hasn't really been given a fair crack of the whip. And with Morgan probably going to be playing a more attacking role, and Maelle Lakrar, of course, as well, I think West Ham could be a much stronger side in the new year. So where do they need an improvement? Well, for me, midfield is still a big issue. I think that I mentioned that lack of energy, and I think that's such a big thing. I think with Gori at the base, I think they'll rotate Una Siren and look to bring someone else in to be a bit more of an energetic presence. Someone like a Bracero is a more attacking player. Someone like the Gori is a more defensive player. And then he's someone, I put Poibel there as an example, being that sort of that player who makes things tick along. And I think if they can bring in someone to play that role, that would be absolutely perfect. And the player I would suggest would be Italian international, I know, another one in Emma Severini. What we saw from Severini at the Euros was a midfielder who's able to offer a lot of energy. They often started with a slightly different pivot with players like Ariana Caruso, and Severini would come on into the side and be a huge amount of energy into the team. And I think that's exactly what West Ham need. There's no energy in the West Ham team. It's so flat. I think that they need someone who's going to come on, do the hard yards, make that ball tick a little bit quicker, progress it a little bit faster, and sort of launch that attack. They need a platform for the attack to be launched from. And the FBref profile for Severini shows exactly why she'd be brilliant. Really good creative player, 0.15 assists per 90, 81st percentile. Progressive passes and carries, both really strong, 6.4 rate passes. Progressive passes per 90, that's in the 86th percentile. And 1.02 carries per 90, 69th percentile. Also, shot creating actions, 3.12, showing that creativity, that chance creation she can provide. Doesn't really get many shots away, hasn't scored yet this season, but I think she's a player who can contribute in the final third for West Ham as more of a creative outlet. Doesn't take a load of shots, so it's not too worrying that she doesn't score loads. Defensive numbers aren't brilliant, but if you have got a Gori, have got a Siren, perhaps even both of them behind her, I don't think that would be too much of an issue. So if they can fork out the money to bring in Severini, I think she'll be a player who can contribute massively to West Ham. So that is everything for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have and you want to see players who may be looking for a move away from the WSL, that video will be on screen now. So go ahead and give that a watch. Now that was everything from me today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.